Michelle.
Hey, Kim. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. You know what? You go ahead and do your introduction. I forgot mine.
Yeah. So, welcome to the Business Chicks podcast, where real talk meets real strategies. So, on the show, we cut through the noise and share the lessons, wins, and setbacks that shaped our careers so you can shortcut the learning curve in yours.
Here we go.
I kind of improvised a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, that's the name of the game, isn't it? That's kind of what makes us good at what we do is improvisation. Improvisation. How do you say
Yes. Improvisation. Yeah.
Improvisation. Okay. Well, we're your host. Did you already say that?
No, I did not.
We're your host, Kim and Michelle. And together we have, almost 60 years of experience in the business world. And mine is in leadership and marketing.
And mine is in sales and marketing.
Yes. And so this is the intro is new and we're going to record this, but I will say whether you're climbing the ladder, building your own business, or looking for straight up insights, we are here for you and you're in the right place.
That's right.
So
this is the Business Chicks podcast, and let's get down to business.
Yes. Hey, I like that. And I should probably have had my glasses on. That probably would have been a much easier read for me. Because that almost 60 years should probably clue you into the fact that even though we are the Business Chicks podcast, we are not necessarily young chicks.
That's right.
And so
that's okay.
Probably should have had my glasses on for that. But tonight we are going to be talking about climbing the corporate ladder and whether it's ever okay to step on others on the way up. So, we were talking about, Michelle, before we ever got started, is like we commonly do. One of the ways I was going to start out was by talking about some of the common female anthems, right? And for some reason, all I could think of was Survivor by Christina Aguilera. But then I was forgetting the most popular one, which is
I'm a survivor.
Yes.
I will survive. So I'm a survivor?
That one is too. Yeah. But Gloria Gaynor, the old I Will Survive, the song that I think anytime you go out to karaoke in any wherever, that song is typically sung by some woman somewhere along the line. And, it's largely because of the words, right? I will survive. And I will hold my head up high. I could sing the words if I had to sing. I had a drink in my hand, but without the drink, it's like my memory just goes. But the other big one is respect. We were talking about those are the two, big female anthems. And so it seems like that we commonly, celebrate strong women when it comes to life, right? There's like a lot of, we are totally in support of women being strong in every area of their life. But when it comes to business, there sometimes can be a little disconnect or a little dichotomy there when it comes to business. And we've been talking about, it's like one of those things where you're either, if you're too strong, if you're too assertive, then, there's all kinds of words that they'll throw out there for you, or bitch, all those other words. But if you're too nice, then you're a doormat and you really probably aren't going to get ahead.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, this is the one topic, right, that everybody whispers about the stepping on toes or the, is it ever okay? That sort of thing.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Well, I'm going to read this article. I'm going to start us off with, I think this will probably, let's see if I can remember how to share. I'm just going to share the window. Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to share. I'm still learning this whole share screen thing. People can't teach an old dog new tricks. So hopefully you can.
I don't think that's true. You learn things very easily and a lot every day.
Hopefully, we can. But anyway, let's see. This is an article, which is, it's not, let's see. I've got to see which one it is. It is Why Women Face Backlash. Okay, here we go. Why Women Face Backlash. Let me just share my whole Chrome window. That might be the easiest thing for me here. I have so many windows open. That is another common thing about me is having multiple windows open. Where is it? There we go. Hold on. Sorry for the little technical difficulties. For some reason, it's not wanting to show me my Chrome screen. But let's see. Select a tab to share. It is why women face backlash. Huh. Okay.
And I don't know if we said or not, but
yeah,
like
thank you. Cover
our whole speak right now is all about, is it ever okay to step on people on the way up?
Right.
And so we're focusing on the female side of this, right? As far as for us.
Absolutely.
And it being another just obstacle or another issue we have to discuss and think about every time.
Absolutely. I had to, for some reason, I had to reshare or reauthorize my screen. All right. This is from Wide, I don't know, network, WID network. All right. So here we go. Why women face backlash for ambition. A woman confidently steps into meetings. She speaks with authority, outlines her vision, and asserts her goals. Her ideas are bold, her ambitions clear, yet instead of applause, she's met with skepticism or subtle hostility. Whispers of too aggressive or unlikable ripple through the room. Now, imagine a man doing the same thing. The response, admiration, respect. Words like strong leader and visionary are thrown his way. So why is ambition celebrated in men but scrutinized in women? Why are women labeled bossy for leading, overbearing for speaking up, or selfish for pursuing their dreams? These questions aren't hypothetical. They reflect the harsh reality that many ambitious women face daily. For centuries, society has defined acceptable roles for women nurturers, caretakers, supporters, but rarely leaders or trailblazers. When a woman dares to step outside these confines, her ambition is often met with resistance, judgment, or even punishment. This isn't frustrating. It's deeply unfair. So, yeah, I mean, what are your initial thoughts about that, Michelle?
So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, right? It definitely is, we get backlash a lot. And unfortunately, it's not just from men that we get backlash. It's from other women. I mean, it's something that we do to ourselves as well, which is worse, but also as bad that we're not seeing it and we're doing it to each other.
Absolutely. And that's, it's back to that whole, again, even with women, if you don't stand up for yourself, you're a doormat, right? And you're probably not going to get very far. If you do stand up for yourself, then there's that whole, bitch, ballsy, ball breaker, you know, and it's so unfortunate. And I don't, I know we're going to be talking about, but I don't know that it's an easy answer.
Well, I mean, I think as far as is it okay to step on people? My answer is absolutely not.
Right.
But that's just because my truth, right? Every rung you climb by tearing someone down is something that someone can take away from you quickly.
Ooh, very, very, very good point. Absolutely. Very good point. That's 100% true. And I hadn't really looked at it that way. I like that a lot. Well, I mean, it's a weird thing to like, but I like I like that a lot. It makes a lot of sense. And, it's something that sometimes, unfortunately, not everybody thinks about, right?
Right.
I mean, we probably
absolutely
situations where that wasn't necessarily thought about by, women that we work with.
Absolutely.
And it's here. One of the things, this survey is from McKinsey. And so I'm sure most, probably of our listeners now or, later are going to have heard of McKinsey. McKinsey's really widely known as an authority in consulting in the consulting world. And so we've been talking about some of these statistics, which were bad enough, but oddly enough, they've gotten worse from what we talked about. So this is the 2024 report from McKinsey on women in business. And so they collected information from 281 organizations that collectively employ more than 10 million people. They surveyed 15,000 employees and more than 280 HR leaders about their insights, policies, and practices, women across the board. And so I'm just going to scroll down. And the bottom line is they say progress is not parity. Over the past decade, women's representation has increased at every level of corporate management. most notably, they say this like it's a good thing, but it's because of how bad it was. Women today make up 29% of C-suite positions compared with just 17% in 2015. But it's been much slower earlier in the pipeline at entry and at manager levels. This blew my mind. So forget the whole above 50th percentile, right? Forget that. We're looking at 50th percentile and below. So when we look at that, representation of women in entry-level positions is that first block you see, which is like 48%. It looks. Manager, about a little bit over 40. Senior manager, which is where I think currently in our workplace, I would put us, right? Senior director, that's about 35%. But then we'll look at that drop. Vice president, 30%, just about 30%. Senior vice president, about 27%. And then there's that C-suite, which, they said 29%, but it looks like, I mean, I don't know, over time, I mean, to go from in 9 years to go from 17% to 29%. Yeah, it's an improvement, but it seems like it should have happened a lot faster.
Yeah, that's a small gain in that amount of time. You're talking 12%. Is that what it was? The 12% difference in 9 years? That's
when we tout, when we tout that it's getting better, right? When we tout that, women have gained equality. And I would have told you, like we said the other night, I would have told you, I thought it was a little bit better than that. I didn't think it was quite that bad, but it's pretty freaking negative.
Absolutely. And it's not going to get any better right now, unfortunately, too. Like, it's not like it's on a big upswing and things like that, right? Like we're in a big swing right now of getting more women in the field. We're not, and especially not at a C-suite level.
Absolutely. And look at this. Here's the makeup, right, of different, and again, this is by McKinsey. If you're joining us, this is, it's not some little fly-by-night survey or company. This is McKinsey. And of entry level, it's like, it's not too bad, right? In general. But then you go into manager, it gets a little bit worse. You go into senior manager, which again, Michelle and I were saying that's about where we are. Then you go into VP and it's rough, pretty much.
That's a drastic difference.
A quarter. And when you look at, let's not even talk, I don't mean to say it that way. Let's not even, not to mention, right? That's white women. Then you got women of color and men of color, which again, proportionately population wise, you could say, okay, well, but that's still ridiculously low.
It's absolutely.
It's still, especially, when you look just in light of everything all together, when we're talking about together, right? So that's white women, women of color, men of color, that's 47%. That's still less than half.
That's insane. When you think about how many are in the workforce, it's not as if there is, it's not as if we're in the 60s or 70s when it was, the people in the workforce were disproportionate to that extent.
Good point. Yep. And then look at senior VP. Senior VP, it's just dismal. It's not, I guess wouldn't be the right word. Abysmal might be a better word. And it's just, it's not good. And it's not, and it says, what's more, women continue to face barriers at the beginning of the pipeline. They remain less likely than men to be hired into entry-level roles. So even here, right, where entry level is better, they are still less likely, we are still less likely to be hired than men. So then that makes everything just,
it continues to perpetuate.
It's just downhill from there, right? It says in 2018, for every 100 men who received their first promotion to manager, 79 women were promoted. So, okay, not too bad. But in 7 years, that's only increased by 2%.
Yeah, right. I mean, the 20% difference is significant, but to increase only that amount makes it worse. It makes that number worse.
Yeah, it's like something has slowed. And so they're calling this kind of the broken rung when we're talking about the corporate ladder. They're talking about that's the name that they've they've attributed to it, or, have started calling it. So, in general, the big thing about that is that, of course, women, it would seem, are feeling like they sometimes have to resort to drastic measures to get ahead. And that's kind of where that, is it ever okay to step on somebody else up on the way, or way up the ladder? And here's what's really interesting is research shows that we are just as ambitious as men. Women want to work, want to excel, want to accelerate, and we want to be making more money. So that's just going to compound the problem.
Well, and I'm not saying climbing isn't competition, right? Like trying to get to where you want to be, it can be competitive, but it doesn't mean it has to be cruel. And I think that's the biggest thing to me. You can be ambitious without cutthroat. And I think that's the difference, in my opinion. Again, this is my thought process. And, maybe this is part of the reason that women aren't making those runs in the VP and the SVP and the C-suite. And not that makes it right at all. But I feel as if probably that is a majority of women. That is how we think, that the idea of bringing people up with us is more our idea than just how far can I go. And I think that's part of it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And, one of the things, as we mentioned in the beginning, we've been in our career a long time. And one of the things I do is, aside from my full-time job, I also teach leadership, as a DoD contractor for the government through a consulting firm. And one of the things that I kind of talk about quite a bit is that in general, we know, right? We know the things to do. We know what we should be doing. And there's generally two types of leader that become successful or that move up in the rungs in their leadership. And one of the things that I've really, really noticed is, one of the things I teach is, you're not a leader until you're creating other leaders, right? And, otherwise you're just in front. If you don't inspire people to follow, you're just in front. And part of one of the big parts about being recognized as a leader is basically that ability, right? Is creating other leaders, is really supporting your team and helping to nurture, develop others. And then otherwise you're just in the position of a doer. Like, you might be recognized for your own ambition. You might be recognized for your own growth, but you're going to often find your leadership limited if you toot your own horn all the time. And if you are constantly singing your own praises and you're not really sharing that spotlight with your team, because then you're a great doer, right? You're a great doer, but are you a good leader? Are you a good manager? And one of the things that has really jumped out for me as we've been talking the past couple of sessions or couple of podcasts is, I'm teaching this, but I wonder if that's only true for men. It's really started bugging me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I agree. And I wonder that too, as you were just saying that, because, you think about it, and in my opinion, staying power for a leader. And this is just based on my experience over the years with my leaders, right? Are the ones that I felt most supported by and most, I don't know what the right word is, most connected to, is because they gained that power or title, whatever you want to call it, through integrity and collaboration. And they were lifting other people up. Like their whole focus was about it was good for them when people under them were making moves. Right? Because it made them look leaders. Correct. Because they were leading with integrity. And that to me is a big, I feel like you have more staying power in a position with that type of thing than you do if you're just climbing the ladder. And I feel that it's probably that way for men or women. I think the issue with women, from my perspective, is not the staying power or that sort of thing. It's the actual getting there. Mm-hmm. But I don't think stepping on other people gets you there. I think in my opinion, if it got me there, I don't think that's a company I would want to be with.
Right. Very good point. And I would say at what cost, right? Are you going to lose friends? Are you going to lose, your integrity? And, and, what kind of longevity are you going to have? Because then you can't really complain if somebody does it to you.
Well, exactly. And then when you get to the top, are you looking around and the people you're working with and that are working for you? Number one, are they still there? Right. Is a big thing. But also, are you surrounded by, allies that are going to help you and when you need them and things like that? Or you have a trail of enemies you've just left on your way up.
And do people trust you? Trust is another thing that I'm always, teaching about, is like a cornerstone of leadership is trust and character. And, what, if you get to where you want to go, is it hollow if you have done it on the backs of others, or is it going to be everything you wanted it to be if you're there alone? They say it's lonely at the top. I don't think it's lonely at the top if you do it the right way.
Exactly. I don't think it has to be.
Yeah. I just think, it's just something that popped into my head as, I was kind of reading the stuff for this, is I was like, God, is that the case? Is that, because one of the things, it's, we've been talking, is that we originally started this podcast, to help, women our age, right, that may be newer in their career or looking to move up, that haven't yet, and that, are still making those strides and are still working in that direction. As we said, we're not done yet. We may, 55 is the new 30. So, I mean, that's why we started it, is to help other people. But one of the things that we've discovered is that we're learning a lot, and we're about ourselves and about things that we need to be reminded of. And, because I, and I think you have too, compared, and when we talk about our stories, but in a previous job, I was a CMO. It was a smaller company. So where I'm at now, even though it seems like a lower position as a director, it's actually, for a larger company. So it's still a career progression. But when I feel like when you get to those higher levels, it's easier to talk about doing the right thing as leaders than it is getting there. Because there's so many things that, that play in when you're getting there. Right. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about, is the getting there. How do you get there? It's a lot easier once you're there, in my opinion, in terms of leadership. Now, not the job, but I mean, in terms of leadership, and the questions become different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the challenge of how to get there. And again, this is going to be, based on every company and based on every person and everything. And I think a lot of it goes back to, what Vincent was saying the other night, of being true to yourself again.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you're with a company that you're true to yourself and it's not happening, then it's maybe that's not the right place for you. Right. And I think that it's easy to say that. We all know it's easier to say that than to do that. However, it has, it really does have the situation of, I feel like we need to go back to building other women up and building each other up and creating that community. Because if you look, I mean, let's just step back and look at all the men communities, right? And let me just preface this by saying we are not man bashing.
Absolutely.
Because we both love men. That is not what this is about.
Right.
But look at all the communities they have, right? Because they have golf, they have, all of these things that they do together. That men do, that are, that sort of thing, that they create that community almost.
Right.
And that's a networking situation for them. But then spin that around and tell me how many of those you can think of for women.
Right.
So as a community, we have to support, right? So we're not supporting each other, and just to start that process.
Absolutely. Like you said, we don't have anything against men. In fact, it's not about It's not about tearing men down. It's about helping lift up women to the same place, right? So we don't want to take anything from men. And I think maybe that's sometimes the misconception about men when you talk about sexism and women's equality and stuff. There may be some communities, right, that are looking to tear men down in order to raise women up. That is not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about raising women to be as equal or closer, at least, as possible, right? It's about creating those same, opportunities and creating those same resources and creating those same things that have longer, been in the men's world, is also replicating that in the women's world. So that's like what we're trying to do. It's not tear men down, it's bring women up. And I think
absolutely
a big distinction, because I feel like there are some women's groups out there, but primarily they focus on not necessarily, and I don't mean all, but there's a few that don't focus necessarily on making women stronger. They focus on kind of what we're talking about, but from a overall perspective is tearing men down to make boost women up. And I don't think that's going to work either. I think it's only going to work when we try to meet them.
I agree. And I think that's the thing is trying to get, I feel like it's a two-sided coin, right? Women have to get to the place where they're, like we spoke about, unapologetic. Right. But we also have to figure out a way to bring men to a place where they can honestly say, why is it they're making those decisions about a man? And it's not about them talking to anyone about it, saying what they're doing. It's about them just answering that question. Why would you choose a man over that as opposed to a female over that?
Absolutely. And for the ladies out there that we're actually, primarily speaking to is, in my opinion, the only way they're going to have those conversations or listen to us if we do it in a non-accusatory way, right? Is if we say, hey, the goal is to make this better. And the goal is to, what is it all? Like I told you the other day, I can surely mess up an analogy, but it's like all something rising ship. What is that analogy? All boats. My husband's over there. Keith, what's that analogy? all boats lift the rising ship or something like that. But basically what it means is that when everybody wins, we all win.
Absolutely.
And I can't remember what that analogy is. So hopefully I'll remember it probably when we're done. But it's that's the point, is that when we all seek to be better, we all get better. When we're seeking success for all of us. And I think that's the only way it's going to do it, because it says right here, 96% of women, like sometimes we think, oh, it's only certain women that are ambitious, right? Right. 96% of women say their career is important to them, and 81% are interested in being promoted to the next level. I bet you if you asked most men that I know, they would think that number was much lower.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think that they would believe, or that they would, I wouldn't say they wouldn't believe. I don't think they would guess that 81% of women are interested in being promoted.
For sure. I think it goes back to that same caretaker thing we spoke about in previous episodes. And if you haven't listened to the previous ones, go back and listen to them, because we did touch on a lot of this with more detail and numbers. But because we're the caretakers, I think that it is a perception that women would rather be at home with their kids.
Yeah.
I loved my kids growing up, but good God, I needed to be away from them too. How was I going to stay sane? I mean, I didn't have that choice either, but that is not my personality. And, God bless the ones that can do it, because that is not me. But for women that are able to stay at home, even though you're never at home when you're a stay-at-home mom, and it is a nonstop job, and there is no salary strong enough for that. But it's just not my thing. And I think that's a misconception, honestly.
Absolutely. And, I totally, totally agree. So here are some questions for you. For both of us.
Okay.
But I have seen them. I guess you did too. I sent them to you. So here's the first question. Have you ever held back your ambition because you were afraid of how it would look?
No.
Me neither.
No, I can honestly say I haven't. I have held it back because it didn't fit my timing in my life, but not because I was worried about how it looked. But I'm, again, not the norm either.
Right. Well, I said no real quickly because in general, but then when I think about it, there have been times when I feel like I have cut off my ambition. And what I mean by that is when I haven't necessarily held it back. But when you get told no so many times, I think eventually there have been situations where I have backed off because then I started feeling like remember we talked about the too much and a lot, where I feel like there is in the back of my mind, at least, and this is one of those things like we talked about, always working on, right? There is one of those things that where if you ask too much, that you become a problem. And so I think that is something that probably is going on in the mind of a lot of women because we are very strong women, and I have had to fight that battle in my head in the past. I bet you that there are a lot of strong women that maybe not held back their ambition, but they have not been able to outlast the men that maybe have control over their career. And by that, I mean, they get tired of being told no. And so they somewhat either give up or they move on. And I wonder how many workplaces have lost really people that could really transform a company because they've thought they've won by outweighing or outlasting the woman who stopped asking. Right. But
right.
There's, again, I'm going to mess up an analogy. So I'm not going to try to make an analogy. I'm just going to say what I mean. But there is that expression, that once she stops asking, you've already lost her.
Right.
And I think that's, I've seen kind of versions of that in LinkedIn lately where, it's something like you lose your best people when your best people become quiet, you've already lost them, or that kind of
yeah. And I think that's a really good point and something I hadn't thought of it in those terms, right? Because we had talked about the other night a previous employer where they didn't want women to do outside sales because of, the whole family thing, kids to take care of, traveling, blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I mean, I was, younger, but I was a single mom. But it was something I wanted to do. I just knew I couldn't.
Right.
So to your point, it wasn't that I gave up my ambition. It was that I knew it was not going to be met with a yes. So I
you gave it up there. You gave up your ambition there. Yeah. And
correct.
So I think, I think that's one of the things, what is we could sit here and examine, I'm sure we've all heard it, the cost of hiring a new employee, right? The cost of losing an existing employee. There's training, there's all those things. And I wonder how many times companies, and not just that, right? Not just that cost, but opportunity cost. Like what did you miss out on by,
absolutely,
you're so proud of yourself for outlasting, the request, right? You get so proud of yourself for, oh, well, we put her off for another 6 months or put her off for another year. But then when that costs you people, what are you losing? Not just in money, not just in retraining, but in opportunity cost. What did you not do that you could have? Because it's weird, isn't it? Because it's like you're dealing with someone clearly that has ambition, right? That can probably drive change, drive success, right? So the very fact you're cutting off or quelching the ambition that could actually help you to see success. So it's like you're cutting off their ambition, and in the process, you're cutting off potential success. It's weird.
Right. It's short-term success versus long-term success, right? You're seeing a short-term gain on your side, company side, whoever,
right?
Because you have something in your head that says what? That's not the right person for it, but you haven't given them the chance. And is stuff like that the reason that people step on toes? Because, well, I'm not getting it the honest way.
That's
maybe I need to go and manipulate my way into it. Maybe that's part of it.
That's what I was getting at. And also it was like this big kind of light bulb aha moment for me too, about just in general, about why, why are we doing that? And that's probably part of what is perpetuating the whole problem where, women aren't advancing into these more senior roles is because you take an ambitious woman and you punish her for it. What are you? I mean, not everybody, right? Clearly. And one of the things Michelle and I also say is we're not talking about our workplace. If we were, we wouldn't be on a podcast, right? Because we wouldn't be broadcasting that out in public. So we're not talking about our workplace. We're just talking about things we've encountered. We both have worked at a lot of jobs over the last 60 years. And so 60 combined years. And so, we're using that experience from our past, or again, that's the last time I'll disclaim it because my husband said we did it too much. But in general, it's like an aha moment for me. It's like, I wonder, we're punishing ambition in some ways, but are we really punishing ourselves as a company? Like, I mean, I've even been guilty in my past. I told you, 30 years ago, 28 years ago, 25 years ago, I started Troy University's online distance learning program. And being the boss, being in charge of a lot of people and of a big program at the time, I'll even admit there were probably times when I would see someone who was overly ambitious and they kept coming, when am I going to get promoted? When am I going to be able to move up? And you're like, okay, enough. We're just trying to operate, right? I've been even as a woman, but it's like, that should be celebrated because that's someone who is also going to put that same probably level of intensity into their role, into their job. And so, we end up saying, and I mean, the metaphorical, we end up saying, okay, well, maybe this isn't the place for you, right? Like, we're ready to go. But what that ends up doing is we're losing what might be some of our greatest results, and we pat ourselves on the back and say, okay, we got out of that scenario. But how short-sighted is that?
Right. Well, so then you get the question, of this too, is the difference between healthy ambition and cutthroat.
Good point.
Because is that what creates that? Right? When you keep getting told no, or people are like, just focus on your job here. And, and I've had this, we've talked about this in my previous life where it's like, oh, well, I'll get you there. Oh, okay. But, as we learned from Vincent, I should have said, I need a plan.
Right.
I want a plan on how to get me there. And I think that using those types of tactics are what we're going to have to start doing as women to make it happen.
Right. And that was the whole point of the, WWMD, right? What would men do? Because what has been working for them, because maybe we need to try it a different way. Right. And again, we being metaphorical, but when you said that, it made me think of something else too, is like, but is that what develops it? Not in every case, right? But is that what creates some of the more cutthroat women? Because they've said at their past job, as they move on, what do they exhibit at their next job? Because if at their past job, doing things the right way didn't work, what are they going to carry with them to that next role? And they're going to say, well, it didn't work the normal way, or it didn't work this way. So now I am going to become cutthroat. I am going to look out only for me. Is that what creates it?
And I mean, I think that's probably the majority of what creates it, in my opinion, because I think there's very few people that go into, male or female, that go into a situation where they're like, I'm just here to climb a ladder and get to, the star, the title, the whatever I want. I'm just here to climb. Well, exactly. Right. And I think that there's very few people. I mean, not that people don't go in with ambition and I want to move up and I want to, that sort of thing. And that's fine. But I think to go into it in a, stepping on, people, which it makes you wonder where that phrase came from anyway. But I don't think that people actually go in and are like, you know what I'm going to do when I start here? I'm just, I'm going to plow everybody down and make my way up.
Right.
It's got to be a cultural
and
thing.
Fear. And the regular ways not to work.
And insecurity, maybe. Because, and does it I know this is going to sound crazy because this is one of those little current terms sort of thing, but you get in as females, how often you get in that imposter syndrome right? And maybe when you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to plow my way through so I don't have to think about that.
Right. And so nobody questions me if I act this way long enough, right? Fake it till you make it, kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, do you think women are judged more harshly for being ambitious than men? I do.
Oh, absolutely.
I do.
I absolutely do.
I think it's just a built-in, unfortunate, I guess, mentality that we still haven't, and I don't blame anybody for it. I mean, we're still not that far from the women's movement in general in the big history scheme of things. So I don't blame anybody for it, but I do think that there are certain behaviors that we celebrate in men. And when women do it, for some reason, we find it annoying or overbearing, or where it's that little phrase that we kept talking about last week, a lot, right?
A lot. Yes. Yeah.
I definitely think that there is a little bit of a stigma around it. And I think some women would, and luckily, again, we're not going to disclaimer it a lot, but we've got some really good women in our workplace, so definitely not talking about anybody there. But I think there are some women that would rather be perceived as the ballsy bitch than a lot. I think that for some reason, ballsy bitch carries some masculine, like, coolness to it versus a lot, even though we're talking really about the same thing, carries a more negative connotation.
It does. And I think that, and sometimes that may get you where you want to go. I just don't think it's a long-term sustainable situation if that's not who you truly are, because you're not being true to yourself, which is then going to do the whole burnout thing that we talked about, in my opinion. Right. Because you're spending so much time being that persona that you've created to what you think, but now you don't know if you could have gotten ahead with that company.
Absolutely. What about this question? Have you ever, probably not you, but have you ever held back speaking up or being more aggressive because you were worried about how you'd be seen by others?
Yeah, actually. And it's not like me. It's not like me, I know. But on the other hand, in looking at that, it comes down to the same thing. Depending on the room you're in, the table you're at, is this an appropriate situation for me to be that way? And there are probably plenty of times where I wasn't, and I should have been.
I feel like, again, I must have a trigger around that phrase a lot, right? Because I feel like that's something that holds me back sometimes too, is I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the women wanting to be perceived as the nice girl or what it is. And maybe it's generational, but I think sometimes I do hold back from, and I think Vincent, put it a really good way when he said last week, peaceful revolution is we've got to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks because men don't do it. And I was like, huh. Okay.
Right. Absolutely.
And that falls in right here. Here are some of the reasons, right? The double bind refers to the contradictory expectation placed on women that we were talking about. Society expects us to be warm and nurturing, yet those traits often conflict with the qualities associated with ambition, assertiveness, confidence, and competitiveness. And when women display ambition, they're often seen as violating gender norms. And here's that thing. Here it is, right? A 2008 study by Catalyst, a nonprofit focused on workplace inclusion, found that women who exhibit leadership traits are more likely to be perceived as difficult or unlikable compared to their male counterparts. On the other hand, remember that whole agreeable, the nice girl, women who conform to traditional gender roles are often overlooked for promotions or leadership roles. So kind of goes back to what you were saying. That is probably part of what creates the whole stepping on people to move up the ladder or trying to move up the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's like cultural stereotypes. That to me, that's almost the same thing. Is like ambitious female characters frequently cast as villains. The career woman who sacrifices love or happiness for success. Well, I haven't sacrificed.
Devil wear Prada,
Yeah.
we've got all like those are that's what we see. That's what they're showing, right? The powerful ones are Cruella de Vil, right?
Yep, exactly. It doesn't look good. It's not that we talked about this too, right? We found out that one of the things, if you haven't seen our past podcast, one of the things we found out is that attractive women actually and we're talking about women who actively work on their attractiveness or try to be attractive. Attractive women, generally speaking, get promoted less than attractive men. And the more attractive a woman is, the less likely she is to be promoted. I found that blew my mind, but it kind of probably goes hand in hand with that.
I think it does. I think it, does it appear in that sense that she's, softer or not as, going to be as tough on people as her counterpart, or,
it just reinforces the woman stereotype, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. So what constitutes stepping on people?
So here's an interesting thing this is a great question too, because to me, stepping on people isn't just about making yourself look better than them, but sometimes it's making them not look as good. So taking credit for someone's work, to boost yourself up, pointing out someone's mistake to boost yourself up. To me, those are big things that is an angle. Anytime I feel as if you're working with someone and you have an angle when you're dealing in something, then you're stepping.
Like when it comes to dealing with other people, if you have a strategy for dealing with someone else, that would be, I agree. I would agree with that. Yeah. So what do you think is worse? Stepping on someone and doing well, or not being aggressive enough and watching someone else step over you? Ooh, I don't know. That's a hard one.
What's worse is not being aggressive enough.
So you think not being aggressive enough and watching someone step over you is worse than stepping on someone and doing well?
Yeah, because I think that you've sat back and let them do it. And I've done it.
I see. Okay. So I was looking at that a different way. I was looking at it. No, so that makes sense. I was looking at it like, who is the worst? Who is the worst one? The one that hurts somebody else, or the one who lets themselves be hurt? And that's why I was saying it was so tough for me, because I don't think I want to be either one.
No, but I think it's worse to be the one that gets hurt.
Yeah. In terms
because
of
then you haven't stood up at all.
Yeah.
And you're not moving forward at all. Then you let it happen to yourself, right? Fool me once, right? The whole you let it happen.
And I think that is, something I had not, especially in a man's world, right? It probably really looks less powerful,
right,
in a man's world if you let yourself be stepped on, versus they can somewhat respect the stepper, because that's something they know, right? That competition, competitiveness, the win at all costs. They don't respect the letting someone step on you.
Correct. That's how I perceive it.
No, that's a good point. At first I was thinking, wow, that's difficult, because I don't want to be either one. But, and when we're talking about, being in a man's world, I can see where men would not respect, even though, and see, there's where that dichotomy comes in, even though it's not the nice girl thing to do, right? You don't want them to perceive you as the nice girl.
Correct.
Which makes like a whole mind.
There's a lot we have to think about every day.
Well, and Vincent really last week or Sunday night hit the nail on the head. He's like, I can't believe y'all have to think about all of this in addition to your job.
Exactly.
And it's like, we do. I mean, and I think sometimes that's what men, even the most well-intentioned men, forget or don't think about. Is they often can just do their job.
Correct.
We have to think about all of this in addition to just doing our job, and it's a lot. talk about a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And I really do sincerely believe that there are a lot of men in positions that just flat out don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not, I don't mean that in a negative way.
Right.
They just don't realize it's happening. They
Mm-hmm.
don't think about it in those terms.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, if they're not the ones that are choosing the men to promote and things like that, they don't think about it because they're not seeing it. Like we talked about the other day, right? Where you said, well, it wasn't, if you don't see it, you don't really think about it in certain terms, if it's not happening to you.
Right.
And I think with a lot of men, that genuinely is the case. And right, wrong, or indifferent, until someone brings it to them, they just don't see it.
Well, honestly, I didn't. I mean, until Vincent said it, even though I live it, I didn't think about it. Like, even though I live it, I hadn't thought about the fact that, like, I mean, obviously, I don't think that men are having these whole long dialogues about every decision they make, but I definitely didn't think about the fact that we are thinking about all of these things in addition to doing our job versus most men don't, like men are not thinking about these things. Men are not thinking about how they sound and if they sound, bitchy, or if they sound too nice, or if they're going to make someone mad, or if they're going to, he's like, men are not thinking about this. But I think sometimes even the most well-intentioned men don't realize that sometimes they're contributing to it by the comments that they make, even if they're not like
agreed
bad comments, right? But by saying things like, is she in a bad mood today? Would you ask her that? I mean,
well, exactly.
And I don't think twice about it when someone asks me. I kind of laugh it off, and I really don't mind it, but that's part of the problem.
Right. Exactly. And we have to flip that script.
Because I don't mind it when someone says that to me. I don't mind.
But you don't mind it because you've had it for so many years. I mean, I feel as if it was said to a man in a meeting, like it's said to us, not again where we are, but in meetings as women. I feel like men would, I feel like men would be like, what's that got to do with anything? And we don't think to say that because we do this whole thing that we've done all our lives. And I know, especially for our generation, we'll be like, oh, it's okay. People will be like, I can't believe he said that to you. And it's okay. It didn't bother me. That's not the point. It's not okay.
Well, because it's like a million little cuts, right? So
correct.
It's not that any of it's bad. Like it doesn't, it's not like, that it doesn't make someone a bad person, or it doesn't make them, misogynistic. It doesn't make them even a chauvinist. It's just little comments. And I'm not even going to call them microaggressions because I don't think it's aggressive. I don't think it's intended to be that way. It's just the way it's always been. So saying, is she in a bad mood today? Or, I mean, heaven forbid someone says, is it that time of the month? Hold it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Hopefully no one would ever say that. But it just in general, little things like that, right? That is, that again, you wouldn't say necessarily to a man, and you don't mean it derogatory. You don't mean it, and I don't take it that way. But it's like, it is that combination, the million little cuts, right? It's the combination that would make a male think, when you're being assertive, right? Oh, you've got on your big girl voice today, or something like that, right? And so it's that is just, that's part of it, right? That's part of what keeps perpetuating it and making us then think, okay, how am I saying this? Am I being too firm? Am I not being firm enough? Am I being too needy? Am I not being aggressive enough? Am I being too assertive? What words do I choose? It's exhausting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's really, it is exhausting. And you're not getting, like Vince was saying, you're not getting your best out of us if we're having to spend 50% of our time thinking about how we're saying something and how we're phrasing it and how we're positioning it and, what time of the day we're going to deliver it, because we don't want to make somebody mad because they haven't had lunch. I mean, it's just right.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true.
So, can can ambition be expressed in different ways so that women don't suffer backlash? I think that's what we just talked about, right? What do these different ways look like in practice? Well, I think it becomes, and we'll get to in a few minutes, before we go, we'll get to some of the like suggestions from experts. But I think what it boils down to is, I feel like if men who are well-meaning, which I feel like most are, right, would ask themselves, would I think this, say this, expect this from a male, right? I mean, and start catching themselves, right? Because I don't want to point it out. I'm not going to point it out.
Right.
So I think it's going to have to be asking, and Vince was saying that, right? He said, I told him, I was like, you need to write a book, have a class, whatever. Because he said,
agree.
Start with the men realizing what we're doing, that we're not bad. Nobody's saying they're bad, but it's not going to change until they stop doing those things.
Well, that's exactly it. And it has to come, like I said, it's two sides of the coin, right? Both sides have to stop doing what they're doing. We have to stop allowing it, and they have to start recognizing that it's happening. Yeah. And that's the only way it's going to start changing. Because he had a great point in, having the conversation with the men at the top, him or another male having that conversation, and then women have to have that conversation with other women, so that you're getting both sides together. It's like we talk about speaking the same language,
right?
They have to be on the same page, or that's not going to change.
Right. Exactly. And, a perfect segue into the next part, because that's exactly what I was thinking, as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, okay, women, you're not getting off the hook. We've got to stop. Also, I think, as a female gender group of women, I don't know if that's the right word anymore, but you know what I mean? As women, we've got to stop looking at other women who are ambitious negatively as well, right?
Right.
I think we sometimes force the problem where they're like, she's not going to like me anyway, so I might as well just do whatever it takes, because even if that's not part of our repertoire, or they're doing it a different way, and it's I think that's part of it too. And there's a whole word for it, a whole term for it that I had never heard. Have you heard the tall poppy syndrome?
No, I had not.
Okay, so we're going to watch a video, because apparently it's a big thing. And I don't know if it's like a up and coming thing, like maybe our generation just didn't talk about it, but it is like really, really well known, the tall poppy syndrome. So let's see.
Interesting.
There we go. So yeah, I mean, it's like really common. I'm like, how have I never heard this?
Have you ever found yourself playing small because you're worried that you'll be criticized for showing the world just how brilliant you really are? It's called tall poppy syndrome, and you don't have to be 6 feet tall like me to suffer from it. I'm Eleanor Beaton, and in this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways that tall poppy syndrome is preventing you from stepping into your power as a true leader. Tall poppy syndrome is a social phenomenon in which people of merit are criticized or resented because of their achievements. In other words, what do we do with the tall poppies? We cut them down. Now, this is a huge problem for ambitious women, because on the one hand, we're socialized to be nice and to put other people's needs above our own. On the other hand, we're taught that in order to get ahead, we have to work hard, get great results, and not be shy about tooting our own horns. Tall poppy syndrome holds ambitious women back from growing their businesses and advancing their careers in 3 key ways. Number 1, tall poppy syndrome makes you self-conscious. Now, there is a huge body of research that shows self-consciousness inhibits high performance. So if you're worried that your greatness will make other people uncomfortable, chances are the fear is...
Okay, I got to stop this for 1 second. 1, so we don't get a copyright strike. 2, because that's the whole thing about thinking, right? That whole self-conscious, we're adding that whole element. Like, am I going to make somebody mad? Are they in a good mood today? Are they in a bad mood today?
Right.
Am I being too much? Am I not being enough? If we're doing all those things, self-consciousness is going to be maxed.
Mm-hmm.
already
Absolutely.
affecting your performance. Number 2, tall poppy syndrome can cause you to hold back from pursuing high-profile assignments because you're afraid to put yourself out there and cause even further resentment. The trouble is, holding back from high-profile gigs can stymie your career and slow your company's growth. Number 3, tall poppy syndrome can prevent you from building a powerful personal brand. That's because tall poppies often hold back from highlighting their achievements on LinkedIn, in their resumes, or in their formal bios. All 3 of these areas present a tremendous opportunity to build your profile as a leader and an influencer. If you suffer from tall poppy syndrome, you are not alone. This phenomenon is very common among ambitious women in business. For tips on how to overcome tall poppy syndrome, click the link below this video. And be sure to subscribe to this channel, where each week we provide you with tips, tricks, and inspiration to help you claim your power and change the world.
She did a great job.
She is very good. Mm-hmm.
She did a great job of explaining that. So yeah, definitely, if you're watching this, go follow her, go subscribe. She did a great job of explaining that, but I didn't know that was a thing. No,
I didn't either.
I don't feel like we suffer from that, but I think because in general, I think we're not, aside from maybe the self-consciousness part with the conversation, but I can see where that would be a thing for many women.
Absolutely.
That would really hold them back.
No, I absolutely can. And I think it's just very interesting, but I think that it reflects back to the, like she said, and like we've been talking about, the being nice thing. We've been taught to be nice, play nice, be, all of that. And we just, again, we've created that culture that we have to start making those changes, and we've got to do it from both sides.
Absolutely. And, because that's it. I don't want to ever be part of the problem for other women at all, where, again, part of the problem, not the solution. And so, I was thinking, I'm like, do I ever feel like I am being, part of the problem for other women?
Right.
And I want to make sure that I don't. So I think that it's good to know about this whole tall poppy thing. And it's definitely, I would say if you're out there and you're listening, or you listen in the future, and there are other women that are creating this scenario or situation or environment for you, I would say that's a good place to practice speaking up, because I do feel like most other women are going to be open to that conversation.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. And I think that's where it starts.
Right. Right. If you're having trouble speaking up to men, maybe start with the women, and say, hey, you're making me feel this way. Because I feel like any woman may not want to hear it, but would be open to hearing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that would help to build your resilience, right?
Right.
So I mean, Michelle, you have a course coming on resilience.
I do actually, just to try and give you some strategies, and I hopefully will have it out soon. It's done and just needs to be polished, but yeah, it's just about understanding what resilience is and how to bounce back from it, and setting up key ways to do it. And it's, all comes down to mindset, a lot of it, and changing how we work with others, just like we're talking about here.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's super exciting, because I think resilience is huge. I mean, in fact, it's been called one of the key recipes for thriving is resilience. And women that, or anybody that has resilience, it can make a huge difference in happiness, satisfaction, and of course, success. So I think that's exciting, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. And you don't get as far as we have without resilience. Let's be honest.
No, that is true. That is true. Because if you're younger, listening to us now or in the future, just know that there will always be stumbles, right? There will always be falls. There will always be setbacks, and there will always be times when you feel like it's never going to work out, but it always does. And I used to have a friend that was a male, and he used to say, whenever you get into those, really like melancholy, nothing is working out moments, he said, just think they can't eat you.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, true. So why does, here's the thing. Why does this all matter? Well, for one, again, if we're not dealing with it actively, right? If we're not dealing with these issues, we are going to end up creating one or two things. You're going to create women who are going to step on others to advance because they think that's the only way they can win. Or you're going to run off ambitious women who could be good for the business, good for the company, because they just get tired, right? They just get tired.
Absolutely.
And that's what McKinsey's survey said. If companies don't work and work fast to remedy the lack of advancement opportunities, top female talent will walk. And in fact, they said in 2022, 2023, and in 2024, they call this the great breakup. And women are leaving companies at higher rates than male leaders at the director level, which is the group next in line for senior leadership positions. And, it goes on to say that women, if you do not have women in your senior leadership positions, that you company just it's missing something, and you don't even know what it's missing yet, is basically what they're saying. What McKinsey, again, who one of the top voices in consulting, is saying, you don't even know what you're missing. And
yeah, absolutely.
And that's kind of, I guess kind of what it boils down to is, it says businesses must continue to encourage women to ask for what they want and not penalize them when they do. And that's where I think that whole, step on people on your way up the corporate ladder, that's what happens. We create one of those areas. We either create women who could help drive the business forward, could help create success. We push them away, and we create women who are willing to take the backlash of stepping on other people, So I think, that's kind of the sum of it. Oh, there's one more article that gave some good steps, but while I'm pulling this up, Michelle, you want to add anything to that? Because I think that's kind of like my big thought is, you're going to create one or the other. Which one do you really want?
Well, and I think that's where we're going to, and actually this is something our boss tells us, right? People always go after your number two. And when you've got strong women leadership that isn't actually in leadership, but they're the number twos, that's who they're going to go after. And if they are going after a woman in that company, and again, that's not our company, but that company is not recognizing those women, that's who the other companies who are starting this process are going to go to. And I think as the rise in female CEOs, we'll start to see how changes are when people see that they can be in leadership, make a difference in that company. And hopefully those women CEOs are going to bring up other women with them.
Absolutely. And so, one of the things we always want to leave, women with that are, as we're leaving and as we're shutting down, is kind of like some of the things we can do, right? What are some of the steps we can do? And so, like Michelle was saying, she has a course coming on resilience. I have one coming on two things. I have a success mindset, and then what I call the quantum mindset, which is one step out from success in work. And that's success, and I celebrate my 28th anniversary this Saturday. And, it's success in life, happiness. I've done a lot of study on happiness and what creates true happiness. And I would say I'm, for the most part, definitely happy. And there's a term for that called eudaimonia that most people have not heard of. And it really ties happiness with purpose, is understanding your purpose. So the success mindset is about success at work. And then the quantum mindset is about success, all the way around. But right here is just a few tangible things from the WIDD network that we women can do ourselves to help others overcome the bias. One of the things is, another big expression is, the thing you can control most is yourself, right? You can control very little around you, but is own your ambition, is, own it unapologetically, and realize it's not a flaw. It's not something to hide. It's okay to be a lot, because chances are, if you are being a lot, it's because you're trying to offer or have a lot to offer. So, reframe how we view ambition, right? Instead of seeing it as something that makes us too much. See, it's not just me talking about it.
That's right.
Right here. It's like, instead of seeing it as something that makes you too much, recognize it as a source of strength. Oprah Winfrey once said, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is another stepping stone to greatness. And that's where your resilience comes into play.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's about going through it.
Absolutely. And finding allies and mentors. Surround yourself with people that support and uplift you. And I think that's huge. And I think it's like you said, Michelle, seek out networks or communities of like-minded women.
Yes.
And I think, that's what we're striving to build, right? Then challenge stereotypes. One of the most effective ways to combat bias is to challenge it head on. This means calling out unfair treatment, even when it feels uncomfortable. And again, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes women and just people in general, I think feel like it has to be one way or the other. Either I don't say anything or I'm rude. And, and I don't think it has to be one or the other. It could just be, hey, do you realize what you just said to me?
Right.
Yeah. That makes me feel is, just even if it is done in a way that is non-confrontational, because I'm not a confrontational person. But so it's a stretch for me, right? It would be a stretch for me to say just, hey, please stop saying that. But I think, I think I'm going to have to find a way that's comfortable for me. Again, not in my work, but just in life in general. I think sometimes the good girl in me it has a hard time challenging things that maybe I should sometimes.
Well, and that's what I used to ask my kids, right? And we've had that conversation when they would make a comment. And my thing was, what do you hope to gain from that comment?
Right.
What do you hope to gain from it? And I think that's the biggest thing that makes people step back and go, oh,
absolutely.
I don't know. Didn't even realize I was saying it, or didn't even, anything like that.
I think that's perfect. What Vince said a version of that the other night too. What did he say? Like, why are you saying that to me? Is that what he said?
Something like that. Yeah.
Basically the same thing you just said. What do you hope to gain from that? Or, what is the purpose behind that comment? I think that would be comfortable for me. Like I said, in life, just in general, is for someone non-confrontational, figuring out a way to say the things that need to be said. As it says here, use your voice to challenge outdated norms. If someone calls you bossy or aggressive, calmly point out the double standard and reframe the narrative. And, it is uncomfortable, but again, it doesn't have to be rude, but they don't know what they don't know. Right. And a lot of times I truly believe people wouldn't say some of the things they say if they knew how it was affecting others.
Agreed.
And then redefine leadership. Ambitious women are often penalized for not fitting the traditional mold, but leadership doesn't have to look a certain way. Lead authentically. Instead of trying to emulate male leadership styles, embrace a leadership style that feels true to you. And that's right there is a key word. One of the things I also teach, there's 2 leadership styles that are the most effective when it comes to organizations. And that is the authentic leadership style, the transformational leadership style. Most men embrace the transformational. The authentic leadership style is much more comfortable for most women. It's the style I use with my team. Michelle, it's the style you use with your team too. And so, realize you don't have to act like a man. You don't have to be like a man in order to be perceived as a leader. The authentic leadership style has merit and it works really well. And then educate and advocate. We've talked about that, right? By educating others about the biases, you can help. Sometimes it just takes being aware of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's just, again, standing, being unapologetic for who we are.
Right. And realizing the value that we bring to the table as women, right? And stop apologizing for being like a woman. You're actually a woman. Well, good thing.
Yeah, because I am. Right.
So, I think that's super, super important. Well, anything you want to add before we go?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it.
Yep. So apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. This will be edited out through the magic of video editing before the replay goes up. But yeah, I mean, I think, it's a valuable topic, right? It's an important topic.
And thank you everybody for hanging out with us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And watch for our courses. They will be coming soon. And I guess we will see you again
next
soon.
time.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.